'Cause I Ain't Got a Pencil. That is an interesting name for a poem. I found this scurrying the internet and realized that this poem back in 2018 went viral. And I found an article. I want to share a little bit of that with you. A viral poem about poverty in underprivileged schools has caused a flutter online after it was shared widely by people believing its simple message was penned by a student in Baltimore, in the Baltimore City schools. It was claimed that the poem, 'Cause I Ain't Got a Pencil, was written by a student. But after the poem did the rounds on social media, a 38-year-old professional author and poet, Joshua Dickerson, who actually wrote it, took to Twitter to set the record straight. He said, quote, "I wasn't going to address it, but it keeps coming up on social media, Instagram, Facebook, all over the internet. I'm not a student in Baltimore." It's one of those things, one of those internet things that keeps getting shared. My poem has been written by a couple of people at this point, he says. He's actually from Atlanta. So it's interesting how things can take a life of their own. Stories can get embellished, but the point is that the poem speaks volumes. It's talking about privilege and not having privilege, and what we can pay attention to when we don't have privilege, or if we have privilege, and how a pencil can become a big thing when we come from a place, a family that does not have. So, how important is a pencil when you don't have your basic needs? And yet, for every student, we know it's very important for school. But how can they remember this thing and that thing and to be fully prepared for school and yet go home and not feel safe or feel their lives are in jeopardy? A lot of stress, traumatic stress. We can forget that life can be very basic. It really is. Life is very basic. And when people feel secure, they have clean clothes, they're fed, it makes a big difference in how they perceive the world. It allows them to focus. You can do all you can to get to a place on time and ready, and yet still be ill prepared because something simple is missing. A good night's rest. Help with your homework. In the poem, the simple thing needed was a pencil. But it was less important because there were so many other unmet needs. This poem makes me think that the simple things are also the big things. That's a little bit of a twist. The simple things are also the big things. A small and insignificant pencil put a curve in that person's day when they got to school with that teacher. And you know, there's nothing like having a good meal, having rested in a safe place, and then having all your supplies ready to go for school. Nothing like it for that first day. Which reminds me, there is a post on our Facebook page looking for some help for people to help get some of those basic needs for school. I think Linda Monday posted that. You can talk to her or look at the Facebook page. Please help if you can. In this time of going back to school, I feel like the pencil is preaching. Remember the basics. Remember the basics. For us, the Unitarian Universalists, that's our principles. Our principles essentially say, how do I help myself? How do I be mindful? And how do I help in my community? Well, a pencil can help with this lesson. The pencil has meaning. It also has a peculiar smell. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird. I like the way pencils smell. Pencils that make you want to write, draw. Maybe if you're a math whiz, do some math equations. Nothing like writing something and erasing it and wiping it off and I don't know. I think I like pencils. And I used to love the way my backpack smelled when I was getting ready to go to school, loaded with new paper, fresh paper, pencils and folders. It was a particular, exquisite, and peculiar smell. You remember that? So having a pencil is mandatory. This thin, oval, but hexagonal piece of lead made with 6 sides. 6 is an important number. It symbolizes family and home, care for others, balance. We need balance. The pencil is preaching this morning. So balance will be one of the themes for this year for me. Balance. In astrology, 6 is related to the planet Venus and the sign Virgo. Venus and Virgo, love and preservation. Now, I don't think this idea of a pencil was so deep for the guy who invented it. What I looked up was that he found something that had 6 sides because it was the easiest way, no matter how you turn the pencil, to grip and write. So I don't think he was looking for any deep meaning. But everything has meaning if you look. There's symbolism all around us. And this 6-sided object, this pencil, signifies it's time for families and children to begin again, the school year. The pencil reminds us it's time to get back. Summer's over. Fall is forthcoming. It's getting dark earlier. When I was in school, I could do a lot with a pencil. We used to pencil fight, and we lost a lot of pencils that way. I don't recommend that. I don't know if kids still pencil fight. But I could, oh, my pencil just flew away. I could write with a pencil, draw with that pencil, chew on that pencil. And Joni tells me that girls use pencils for a different way, something related to a bra. I have no idea what she's talking about. In life, it's the little things that matter. The little things become the big things. The big things are the little things. And so this year, I'm going to talk about fractal patterns, Planck scales, and the Fibonacci sequence to help us connect even more to this micro and macro reality that we create and live within. We'll look at the small T transformations and how they relate to the big T transformations. A small T, a hot meal, clean clothes, a fragrance, a smile, a hug, a laugh, a nap. That give us that experience of awe, give us those moments of bliss, give us time to be thankful. So that when the big T stuff, the big transformational stuff comes, we know we'll be okay come what may. Both are needed. As I say all the time, we have to come to a new understanding of our reality, that we live in a both-and reality. Walt Whitman said, we must see all sides and filter from yourself. So we have to continue to have open minds as we think about the big things and the little things. And also for Unitarian Universalism, for it to thrive and succeed, this is a must. Because this is what makes our faith dynamic, modern, and relevant, and moral, to question, to ask questions. It's what makes our faith special. It differentiates us from the traditional mainline religions. So we have to always check ourselves over and over again. We cannot become the very tyranny that we are trying to escape, one dogma leading to another dogma. And so we must continue holding each other accountable and holding the world accountable. But we all must remember that we are all on the same team. Universalism is saying that our goal is planetary reconciliation in the micro and the macro. that what we do in every moment matters with every person, place, or thing. We create beloved community in our moments. This is a critical time in the history of our nation and really world history. We are experiencing labor pains and it hurts. And we're weary. The contractions are evident. But we're at the precipice of giving birth to something. And what is born depends on how we labor. Laboring is not just about going to work, punching a clock, doing the time, going to school and passing tests. Labor is about how we wrestle and struggle to find meaning and goodness each and every day. The outcomes in our world are really dependent on how deep we're willing to go to understand those we love and especially those whom we like the least. And finding ourselves there and knowing that our work starts there. So this year, related to our first principle of the worth and dignity of all people, I want to revisit ideas from best-selling author Malcolm Gladwell and how what he's learned in his research can assist us in the work that we're doing together to move beyond this dichotomy of us versus them, and yet not fall into a kind of moral relativism where nothing matters. It all matters. I also will be looking at with you Dr. Bruce Lipton's work on cell biology and how understanding a cell can help us understand human behavior. I might pull out Russian dolls or talk about the entanglement theory or protons and look into the mind of Einstein when he called quantum physics spooky action at a distance. I want to keep on my theme from last year that we are in a non-linear reality, that we are quantum beings with limitless possibilities. And we are only limited by our mind's ability to think outside the box. All related to our first and seventh principles. Really all 8 principles. And I hope that we can talk more about each one of our principles and how we interpret them. It's important to know, especially if you're new to this congregation, that we are non-creedal. We're non-creedal faith. We do not expect every member to see our principles the same way. And so we must find the places where we can agree and move forward from those spaces. And we must keep growing and transforming. Change alone is unchanging. So I'll pull from the teaching of Harvard Professor John Kotter with his timeless book, Our Iceberg is Melting. Reverend AZ and I will also ask you to honor our 8th principle by continuing to engage with the BBC, Building Beloved Community, through the 8th Principle Practice Series. And we will be having a church-wide book discussion October 4th on Subtle Acts of Exclusion, the book. And see how we can each learn how to be more intuitive in how we relate to each other. Maybe we need to talk less and smile more. Or talk more and smile less. That's my Hamilton shout out. It depends on the power dynamic, of course. So I want to help you with that, understanding when there is a power imbalance and how you can help shift that energy. You can notice power just by where people sit in a room. To understand what discomfort looks like, we're going to look at that. And why it's okay sometimes not to be okay. To be able to sit with discomfort. It's okay when it's related to guilt. When we know we're falling short of our best stuff. It's not okay if we're talking about shame and if someone is being shamed. That's never okay. There is a difference. And so you'll learn or be reminded of how to communicate more effectively your feelings and your needs without offending another's worth. Subtle acts of exclusion is really what I've been preaching about for 7 years: emotional literacy, emotional self-awareness. It's not rocket science. It is a practice that, if done again and again, will transform all of your relationships for the better. And it will make you see the world with new eyes. This is not about political correctness. I hear that on TV. I just can't say anything. Well, it's true, because we've made a mess with how we use our words. We've used a lot of hurtful words to people. We've got to learn how to relearn how to communicate in this new paradigm. So see it as a healthy challenge that all of us have to get our software updated, preacher included. So we have to educate ourselves, knowing that what we did 20 years ago may not work any longer. Try using a computer that's 20 years old. Learning how to engage and build a covenantal and non-covenantal relationship is something we'll focus on. We should not use the excuse of political correctness as a way of hiding from a personal growth opportunity. And so related, when we run away from something, it's generally because we are triggered, because of an inner trauma, something deep that we haven't reconciled. So we will look at the findings of the book My Grandmother's Hands and see if there are some ways to manage our hurts, our traumas, our fears and anxieties. I believe that when you fix yourself like a fractal pattern, you fix your family. And we are in a traumatic time. It's crazy right now. And so we have to be more aware of people's emotional states, know when to back off. Reading a person, reading a room, responding accordingly. It's essential in building a growing and thriving religious community. And so we'll talk about it. How harmony, rhythm, and synergy, flow are so important related to feng shui. How can we feng shui our congregation? In terms of our search for truth and meaning, I want to look at evil. I want to look at sin and karma. Maybe give you some new insights. Give you an opportunity to look at some of these old ideas all over again. I want to study the mind of Dr. King even further and his influences. I plan to introduce some of you to Swami Vivekananda, who brought Hinduism to this country, and the martial artist Bruce Lee, who brought Taoism to North America, and how these two Asians changed our country for the better. I will also explore Lee's influence, his philosophical influence, Krishnamurti, looking at Krishnamurti's concept of freedom and what it means. And finally, social justice-wise, related to our principle of creating a world with peace, liberty, and justice for all, a world of equity and compassion, we will look at my friend Dr. Sharon Welch's books, After the Protests Are Heard, Enacting Civic Engagement and Social Transformation, and her book, After Empire, The Art and Ethos of Enduring Peace. These are where all my sermons will come from. This is the material I'll be presenting this year in our church year. I hope you're as excited as I am. Oh, I forgot one last book, Naomi Klein. Remember her from General Assembly just this past June. She wowed us, those 20 of us who went. It was an amazing lecture. So we're going to talk about her book, and her book's titled On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal, and see what she has to say and how that might impact how we look at how we do church. What if we started looking at our church as a town with certain values, a community with resources? What would our church look like as a Green New Deal? How can we leverage our power and do less harm and more good in our community? So we're going to look at all that. I'm excited. Thank you for the time off in July. I am ready, revved up and ready. And so is Reverend Anastasia, the staff. We're ready to go. If you've been away from church, come back. Please, it's time. We need you. All hands on deck. Lots of work to do. A lot of fun to have as well. We're still a virtual congregation, but we can take this time and remember that all of those small T's, that stuff was not in vain. All of that work that we were doing, storing away our nuts, hibernating, well, it's time for participation. We've contemplated, now it's time to innovate. That's what it's going to take, all of us, all hands on deck, to transform our faith here in the 21st century. And I believe that you're at the right place at the right time here at UUCA. Trust that. We may not know where we're going, and heaven knows where we're going, but we know within that we will get there. Wo-ya-ya, wo-ya-ya. We will get there. Wo-ya-ya. Maybe so.